Let's get into question two. Kind of hard to follow up that first one. I knew I was starting off big with that one, but I really wanted to get that one out of the way because I knew I had so much to say about it. Let's get into question two. This one comes from Anonymous, and they say, my question is, should I say goodbye to my goal of learning to drive? See, I am 40 years old. My husband keeps telling me we have handled it all of these years with him driving me and the kiddos around, but I can't shake it off. I feel like such a bad mother for not knowing how to drive. I am willing to learn. I have just not found someone with the time to teach me, and paying someone is just out of our budget. It feels like I've been such a burden, and it's been a nightmare. I feel like a slave waiting around to see who can take me and my kids to the appointments or to do groceries, etc. I don't know what to do. Should I push through and keep on knocking on the door to drive, or should I just listen to my husband, let it go, and just continue on with my life as a forever passenger? I feel defeated. Okay. Thank you so much, Anonymous, for submitting that question. I hear you. And what I hear you saying most is, should I say goodbye to my goal of learning to drive at 40 or push through even though it feels overwhelming? All right. So to me, this question is very layered because what I hear is the exhaustion of feeling dependent on others, and yet how deeply you care for your kids and your role as their mom. Let's lean into the yes and of this situation. Yes, you're exhausted, and it's so important to acknowledge that. Your feelings are important, your experience is your truth, and you also want to be the best mom to your kids, and it sounds like the best wife. You want to be a team player, you want to lead the pack, you want so many different things for your family, and it sounds like you're saying that you're the reason that none of that can happen, and that's simply just not true. I want to normalize and validate something for you. You're not alone, okay? There's a lot of adults who learn to drive later in life. They're just not as maybe common, but there are a lot of people, especially women in different parts of the world, that never learn how to drive. So first, I want to normalize and validate that you are not alone. There are many adults who learn to drive later in life. They may not be as common, to be fair, but it's not too late, okay? There's no expiration on independence. Just because it's not very common doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. What I really want to go into here is I'm feeling and sensing that there's like a couple of things coming up. So the first thing that I'm really wanting to like zoom out and show you is that shame and skill are totally separate. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm hearing a lot of shame in your experience, but here's the great thing about something like driving. It's a skill that you can learn. And so feeling like a bad mother, quote unquote, isn't really about driving to me. I think that's more so the shame talking. It's that inner voice that's telling you that you're inherently bad. Dr. Brene Brown always says that guilt says I did something wrong, and shame says I am wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. Actually, I'd really want to know, why didn't you learn how to drive? Was it a cultural thing? My grandmother lived her 80 something years, never learned how to drive because culturally in the Middle East, women didn't really drive. I'm sure she wanted to, but she never did. Is it a fear thing? Were you in a car accident as a child? I would love to work through, where is the root of this decision? Was it just something that genuinely just never happened and everyone was willing to just drive you around and you kind of were like, okay, well, this is easier. Driving is just a tool. Okay, Anonymous, it really is. It doesn't define your worth as a wife or a woman, as a human, or as a mom. When I'm working with women and we're working on the mother wound, or we're working on them being a mother, if somebody said to me, I don't know how to drive, I would never assume that they're a bad mom, because I wouldn't define your worth as a mother by driving. What I would ask is, what are the amazing things that you do for your children every single day that truly define a mother? Your warmth, your heart, your emotional attunement to them, showing up for them, being emotionally available for them, being a loving, consistent example in their life, teaching them morals and values. Those are the things that make a great mother. Sure, someone in the world could argue that your lack of driving would be an impediment to motherhood, but I don't look at it that way because it sounds like for the last however many years, you and your husband have been handling it just fine. And your husband saying we've handled it this way for so long and everything is fine, I'm sure it comes from love. And I'm sure it feels validating to hear that. It's nice, right? Like, oh, I guess I don't really have to drive since, I have got this great husband that helps me figure it out. But I'd be curious if even in that love and support that you have, if everything is still okay. It sounds like it, but I don't want to assume. But I would be curious if you still have that longing for autonomy, because both can be true. He feels that it's fine, the kids feel that it's fine, and then you might feel like something about that isn't. And I would want to know, is it the shame talking? Or is it an inner desire you truly have that, hey, you know what? I think instead of blaming this on shame, I'm going to get honest with myself and really understand that I actually want to drive. Like, is there a part of you that really wants to drive? Because if so, own it. Driving is one of the greatest tools, man made tools ever. Having your autonomy, being able to get in the car and go wherever you want, that is a freedom. No wonder at 15 and 16, we're all chomping at the freaking bit to get our driver's license. We want freedom. We want to get out. We want to go where we want to go. And that's also why it's a huge responsibility. So instead of approaching this from being all or nothing, right? Like you're either never going to drive anymore or you have to drive. Let's just break it up into micro steps. Let's create actionable, attainable goals in baby step form that you can work towards, where it can give you some time to discover if you really want to drive or not. It's entirely possible that you're both nervous and excited, and those two things feel the same. It's entirely possible. Like I have had so many situations in my life where it's both nervousness, like I'm going to pee my pants, and also I am so excited. I'm like going to crawl out of my skin. I can't wait. Like I'm like going to burst. You know what I mean? So I think we just have to keep room for that as well. Like excitement and nerves can feel very similar to each other. But these like micro goals without having to make like this huge decision overnight could be find a friend that you love and trust, maybe who has a good sense of humor, somebody you deem potentially a good driver, maybe it's your husband, somebody who's respectful and patient and kind, who can take you just to like an empty parking lot, just like drive around. Maybe like 30 minutes a week or an hour a week just to kind of explore like what's out there, like what does it feel like to get behind the wheel? So, like I said, like driving is one of those freedoms to give yourself, but also that could be the excitement. But the nervousness could also be that driving is a really big responsibility. It really is. It can be a lot of change. If you start driving and you buy a car or you have access to a car, what does that mean for the way that your role exists in the family? How does it change your relationships? Like it might. Those might be things that are happening underneath the surface of you that are just coming to the surface now. And I love that you asked this question because we can kind of bring those gently up to the surface and look at them together. But like, I would just kind of want to like hold space for that. So do you truly want to? Are you okay with the change that might come with it for better or maybe for challenge? I never say for worse, but some decisions we make and they're great for everybody, but there's still challenge that comes with it. There's still an adjustment period. We still have to be like getting used to how everything changes. Yeah. And I also think, and on the same side of that coin, I think we have to address the question, are you okay with maintaining the decision to not learn how to drive? And to me, it sounds like you're a little scared. And guess what? I want to normalize that. If you weren't a little bit scared, I'd be a little bit worried because in like we said, in some ways you've been living your life the same way for 40 years. Big change can always be scary, and your nerves show me your care for the situation, care for yourself, care for your husband, for your children. But also driving is a really big responsibility. So I want you to spend a few minutes every day imagining yourself behind the wheel of your car specifically, the car that you would potentially be driving on a daily basis. I want you could even get in the front seat of the car with the ignition off, everything off, just sit in the garage, cars off, foot on the gas, just kind of like take in the somatic experience and the visual experience the emotional experience of what it's like to sit in the car. What's in front of you? The steering wheel, you've got the dashboard, the radio, you've got the maybe a gear shift, like what's next to you. So put yourself in the shoes of the driver and feel. This is the key. Feel yourself driving the car. And maybe you practice that for, a few days, and maybe you call up a trusted friend or your husband and say, "Can we go to an empty parking lot? Just want to drive around for like 10 minutes, get the hang of things." Also too, like there's so many amazing tools on YouTube. Like YouTube is the greatest educational platform I think that there is, for better or for worse. And I'm going to say for worse there, because there's some things on YouTube we know do not belong on there. But you can learn so much on YouTube. You can learn so much. I'm learning how to drive, like even if it's geared towards 16-year-olds. 16-year-olds are still going to have to learn the same things you are, and vice versa, when you're learning how to drive for the first time. So I just want you to like get in the mindset of like leaning into the feelings to understand, is this actually something you really want to do? Or are you okay taking, pun intended, I guess, a backseat? And so make room for the nervousness, make room for the excitement. You can talk yourself through the emotions, and remember that your brain and your body will trust the experience of driving with time and consistent practice. So you got to put the time in, and you got to get consistent practice. And then maybe eventually you give yourself in 6 months or a year the goal of taking your test and getting your driver's license. Maybe you schedule it around your birthday. It's a birthday gift for yourself. Something you would financially save up for. Maybe you do it for the holidays and you gift yourself your driving test. Like you do have to do practice hours, I believe. So maybe there's a resource out there for people who aren't financially always available to pay for putting in the hours behind the wheel. Maybe there's a volunteer service. I don't know. There's so much out there these days. You can really, truly gift yourself some kind of one-on-one time with someone where you can get those hours in and work towards this goal of getting your driver's license, if that's something you truly want. So this isn't really just about driving for me, Anonymous. I think it's mostly about like your sovereignty, and in the bigger scope of things, the ability to move freely in your own life. If your soul and your heart and something inside of your body keeps tugging at this, I don't think it's something to silence. And I want to close out with this statement. Whether or not you drive, you are still a worthy, loving mom. But if your heart won't let this go, I think that's your inner wisdom saying that this matters. And I think that's worth honoring. All right. Thanks, Anonymous, for submitting that question. Such a niche question, such a hard follow-up after the first one, but a very powerful question. And I just love the little reminders in that. So thanks so much for submitting that.